I am Rachel Carter, 28, tech startup CEO. The Thanksgiving table felt like a stage for their toxic dynamic. My father raised his glass to Jessica for her new real estate asset. We're so proud we financed her $240,000 investment. I smiled politely, swallowing the pain. $240,000. That massive asset was given freely, while 5 years ago, I was denied $400 for textbooks. The emotional debt was still present, but my resolve hardened. They happily announced my sister's $240,000 asset, but that wasn't the worst part of the dinner. The real humiliation came next, a brutal reminder of the $400 I was denied. What did they say that truly turned my silent pain into lethal determination? Flashback to my childhood. The Carter family dynamic was built on two things: old money and entitlement. My parents were upper-middle-class investors who valued traditional success, law, medicine, or inheriting an asset. Jessica fit the mold perfectly. She was their prized asset, destined for conditional approval. I, the tech student with my nerdy obsession, was seen as a sign of their parental debt, an unpredictable, emotional complexity they constantly sought to reject. That was the poisonous dynamic I grew up in. They believed my emotions were a weakness, a parental debt to be paid. But how did this emotional complexity and financial entitlement finally culminate in the brutal $400 rejection that changed my life forever? At 23, I was a dedicated tech student, juggling 2 part-time jobs just to afford tuition. I was developing my coding skill, my true asset, but my parents saw only my struggle, a perpetual debt they resented having to acknowledge. I needed $400 for essential textbooks. When I asked, my mother scoffed. We gave Jessica $240,000 for her asset fund. You're too focused on this tech complexity. Stop being so needy. That humiliation, being called needy while $240,000 was given away, was the deepest pain. I swore a quiet, fierce vow right then: I would never ask them for anything again. My self-determination was born in that moment of rejection. They thought their rejection broke me, but that one word, needy, was the rocket fuel for my determination. How did I turn the sting of that $400 debt into the drive to build my first major asset? And what was the first act of defiance that proved I was done with their toxic dynamic? Every line of code I wrote became an act of sheer determination. I poured the pain of their $400 rejection into innovation. If I was too needy for their approval, I would build an asset so large, their opinion wouldn't matter. My focus shifted entirely from fighting the family dynamic to mastering the precision of my neural computing platform prototype. My skill became my shield, my power source, and my only path away from their debt. My prototype was the proof of my newfound determination, but transforming that anger into a multi-million-dollar asset wasn't easy. What was the critical, mocking comment they made when I first announced my startup idea? And how did that new wave of rejection only intensify my mission? I finally told them about Neuralink, my startup idea. It was a moment of rare vulnerability, seeking some small measure of approval. My father listened, his face slowly turning cold. His rejection was immediate. You compete in Silicon Valley? Rachel, you couldn't handle a $400 debt 5 years ago. You lack the skill and the determination for this kind of complexity. Jessica, the recipient of the $240,000 asset, added her insult. Maybe she'll invent a robot to ask for money politely. Their laughter rang in my ears for months. But their toxic dynamic had miscalculated. Their painful words didn't break me, they became my rocket fuel for self-determination. They laughed at my dream, but I was done seeking their approval. I left the comfort of their entitlement and moved across the country to Seattle. What was life like for the girl they called too needy when she was living alone, facing 42 investor rejections, and driven only by the determination to prove her worth? I moved to a cheap studio in Seattle. No safety net, no family asset. Just me, ramen noodles, and my relentless determination. Every 18-hour day was a silent scream against their rejection and the $400 debt they used to define me. The sting of being called too needy became my rocket fuel. I faced 42 investor rejections, but each no was met with greater precision in my pitch. My coding skill was sharpened by their painful laughter. I earned my own solvency dollar by dollar. My determination was unbreakable, and my little startup began to gain traction. But even after I landed my first major $1 million investment, they still found a way to crush my excitement. What was their ultimate act of rejection when I called home to share my success? And how did their toxic dynamic keep driving the emotional debt higher? I finally secured my first $1 million investment. I had used pure skill and financial precision to build this asset. I called home, momentarily forgetting their toxic dynamic, hoping for a moment of genuine approval. My mother barely let me finish the sentence. "That's nice, dear. But Jessica just closed her first commercial property deal. We're so proud." That's a real asset, not some risky tech complexity. The comparison was a dagger. $1 million was nothing compared to Jessica's $240,000 gift because their entitlement dictated her success was inherently superior. I couldn't bear to hear another word. I hung up mid-sentence. That call solidified a truth. My determination and $1 million in assets meant nothing to their entitlement. The emotional debt was now massive. But just as I reached the peak of my success, preparing for the ultimate passive justice, I met someone who saw my worth immediately. Who was this person, and how did he show me the solvency of unconditional respect? I was at a massive tech conference, surrounded by millions in assets, yet I felt utterly isolated. My success was built on rejection, and I trusted no one. I was pitching Neuralink with ruthless precision, my self-made skill, but my soul still carried that $400 debt. That's when I met David Lin, a veteran venture capitalist. He didn't ask about my family's entitlement. He looked straight at my neural network diagrams and saw the determination and power. He saw my asset for what it was, the breakthrough, not a risk. For the first time since my $400 humiliation, someone listened without judgment. David became the mentor, the trusted friend, the non-toxic dynamic I desperately needed. He offered wisdom, not conditional approval. He showed me emotional solvency was possible. With David's guidance, my company's growth was explosive. I was finally building my own legacy of power and skill. But as my success grew, the Thanksgiving gathering approached. How did the rising tide of my $100 million asset clash with the looming threat of the toxic family dynamic? And what was the life-changing event that made me realize vindication was near? With David's guidance, Neuralink Systems experienced explosive growth. I secured a massive Series B funding round, validating my skill and precision. I was no longer fighting for my small asset, I was building a significant empire of power. David taught me to trust my self-determination and stop chasing external approval. My legacy was being written by my code, not my parents' entitlement. I earned genuine respect in the male-dominated tech world, which was worth more than their $240,000 gift. I secured all this success, yet I told no one at home. The success felt sacred, too pure to contaminate with their toxic dynamic or the memory of their rejection. My emotional solvency was achieved in that silence. I was finally free from the $400 debt. Success was sweet, but silence was my greatest asset. Then, an email arrived from Forbes, inviting me to the 30 Under 30 shortlist. The universe was lining up for a perfectly passive act of justice. How did this coincidence coincide with the worst day of the year, Thanksgiving? And what was the one detail in the Forbes email that guaranteed maximum impact on the Hayes family's toxic dynamic? The email from Forbes hit my inbox like a lightning strike. Shortlisted 4 top 30 under 30 founders. The moment of ultimate, passive justice was near. My determination had paid off with absolute precision. The publication date? The week of Thanksgiving. The same day I was scheduled to face the toxic family dynamic again. The irony was a perfectly crafted asset for my emotional solvency. The crucial detail: Forbes needed a number for a final, quick verification call. I gave them my parents' landline. I knew my father, still obsessed with his $240,000 asset narrative, would answer. I chose not to warn them. The element of surprise was my ultimate power in this final act of rejection. I wanted the world, and them, to acknowledge the skill and determination of the daughter they called too needy. Back to the present. I arrived at the Thanksgiving dinner. Jessica was bragging about her real estate asset. My parents beamed, lost in their world of conditional approval and inherited entitlement. I casually mentioned my company was featured in a lesser-known tech magazine, a small attempt to test the waters. "You're still chasing that fantasy?" He cut me off. Their deliberate ignorance felt like a massive emotional debt. We were halfway through the turkey when I heard it, the distinct, old-fashioned ring of the landline in the hall. My heart pounded with calculated precision. This was it. The moment their toxic dynamic would shatter, courtesy of a major financial publication. My father, the gatekeeper of the family's image, walked over and answered. "Carter Residence, Robert speaking. Forbes magazine? About who?" He froze. The name they had dismissed as a financial complexity was about to become their greatest pain. The phone call had stopped the room cold. My father, who judged everyone based on their financial asset, held the phone, listening to my $100 million valuation. What exactly did the Forbes editor say next that forced my father to finally utter my name in astonishment? And how did I step into my power to claim the stage and deliver the ultimate, silent rejection? The founder of Neuralink Systems? Yes, that's my daughter, Rachel, $100 million valuation? Top 30 under 30? The shock ripped the toxic dynamic apart. Jessica's champagne glass clattered onto the table. The room was silent, save for my father's stammering. This was the ultimate, passive justice. The girl they had called too needy for $400 was now the financial complexity they could not comprehend. "Excuse me, father. I believe that's for me." I took the phone from his frozen hand. His hand trembled, unable to maintain his illusion of power. The final rejection was now delivered by a corporate editor. "Hello, I'm Rachel Carter. Yes, the valuation is precise. The article will focus on self-determination and building assets through skill." I spoke of $100 million, but the real solvency was the peace in my voice. Jessica stared at her $240,000 inheritance asset, now looking pitifully small. She understood the true entitlement, the power of being chosen, had just been rendered worthless by my legacy. Her gaze was a mix of jealousy and pure pain. I finished the call. The turkey was cold. My parents' faces were ashen. The financial debt they accused me of having was now theirs, a massive moral debt for their years of belittlement. Their conditional approval had expired. "I'm sorry, I have to leave. The $100 million business needs my precision." I looked at them. "I'm not needy anymore." The statement was simple, yet it carried the weight of years of determination. I walked away from the table, leaving the turkey, the entitlement, and the toxic dynamic behind. The $400 humiliation was now avenged by the very skill they mocked. I was finally free. The public rejection of their judgment was complete. But after I walked away, my mother stopped me. She had a devastating truth to share, a secret that revealed the core reason for their decades of entitlement and pain. What was the shocking truth that my mother finally confessed, and how did that confession solidify my decision to cut the final emotional debt? I moved to the front door, the silence of the room heavier than any argument. My mother followed me, her face stripped of its usual mask of entitlement. "Rachel, wait. You can't just leave." The Forbes call, it's still our family legacy. Our legacy? Mom, the only asset I have, I built with my own skill and precision. Not with your $240,000 gift, not with your conditional approval. I looked at her, my eyes clear. You only want to claim the power now. Her composure broke. The pain in her eyes was real, not the usual toxic dynamic. It's not about the money, Rachel. It was about self-determination. Your grandfather, he left a significant trust fund. Only for the child who stayed close. The one who needed us. We had to ensure Jessica fit the mold. You always wanted to leave. We feared your determination, your independence, your skill. If we gave you the $400, it proved we could be relied on, and you would leave eventually anyway. The $240,000 was our desperate attempt to buy Jessica's legacy. The ultimate revelation, their rejection wasn't personal, it was transactional. I wasn't too needy, they were too afraid. They wanted to control my self-determination to secure an asset. The confession was a gift of emotional solvency. The massive emotional debt I carried for years evaporated. I realized my freedom was worth more than any trust fund. I had won by simply choosing my own complexity. The $400 debt is paid. I transferred the exact amount. And so is the emotional debt. I'm choosing my own legacy. You are now free of me. And I am free of your conditional approval. Don't ever call me again. I walked out the door, into the crisp Thanksgiving air. The house, once a source of pain, was now just a symbol of their fragile entitlement. I left the $240,000 asset behind, carrying my $100 million power and my hard-won self-determination. I drove away, not with the bitterness of revenge, but the serenity of true justice. The greatest power isn't getting what you want, it's realizing you no longer need what hurt you. I achieved ultimate solvency and freedom, but the aftershocks of the $100 million revelation were just beginning. How did my parents respond when the media painted me as the cold daughter who rejected her family's entitlement? And how did my mentor, David Lynn, finally show me the true meaning of family approval and support? Rachel, $100 million valuation? The CEO of Neuralink? But, you were focused on that tech complexity, you were supposed to be needy. The words $100 million hung in the air, a silent, powerful asset overriding their family legacy. My mother, the queen of conditional approval, gripped the table edge. She saw the years of $400 rejection and $240,000 entitlement flashing before her. Her power had just been publicly stripped away by a financial publication. I walked to the phone. Every step was fueled by the determination born from being called too needy. It's my call, Father. The $100 million asset needs my precision now. I confirmed my details with the Forbes editor. My voice, calm and full of solvency, contrasted sharply with my father's panic. I spoke of technical skill and market complexity, topics they had mocked yet were now forced to revere. Jessica was visibly calculating. Her $240,000 real estate gift, their proud asset, was $99.76 million less than my company's valuation. The quiet pain of realizing her true standing in the family's financial dynamic was immense. I was speaking to Forbes, yet the conversation was only for them. Their faces were the ultimate vindication. The financial debt they tried to impose on me was instantly transferred to them, a lifetime moral debt for their rejection. I hung up the phone. I looked directly at my father. The $100 million company needs me more than this cold turkey. And I don't need your approval. This was the true moment of power. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out, leaving them with their $240,000 gift and their ruined entitlement. I left their toxic legacy behind, carrying my self-made legacy and my absolute self-determination. The public rejection of their judgment was complete, but the true emotional closure came when I drove away. I was finally free from the $400 debt and their conditional approval. But how did I transform the concept of revenge into a profound act of self-determination? And what was the final, surprising gesture I made that truly proved my emotional solvency? I got into my car. The cold air was a physical cleanse. I was free, but the years of carrying that emotional debt left me shaking. I needed a moment of genuine solvency, a reality check that my determination was enough. I didn't call a friend or a board member. I called David Lynn. He was the only person who saw my skill before my asset, who respected my precision without demanding my approval. He was my non-toxic dynamic. Rachel. Happy Thanksgiving. I saw the Forbes press release. I'm proud of you. That's all. His words were simple, yet they contained the unconditional approval that my family's entitlement could never offer. David. I just repaid my mother the $400 for the textbooks. He was silent for a moment. That was the final cost of their control. Now, the debt is theirs. You bought your self-determination back. David saw the complexity of the situation, the decades of pain masked by financial transactions. He didn't ask about their rejection, he focused on my legacy. Your legacy isn't $100 million, it's building Neuralink without their power. You had the determination and skill. I just held the door open. His modesty was the opposite of my father's entitlement. He taught me that true power lies in supporting others' success, not claiming it. Thank you, David. Truly. You gave me the approval I needed to stop needing theirs. I finally felt complete. The Forbes article was the asset, but David was the solvency. Good. Now stop looking in the rearview mirror. Focus on the precision of your next move. That's your revenge, living your best life. The phone call with David confirmed that my true legacy wasn't the $100 million asset, but the self-determination I earned. I had emotional solvency. But what happened in the weeks following the Forbes article's release, and how did the media react to the stark contrast between my professional precision and my parents' public display of entitlement? The Forbes article dropped. The media went wild, contrasting my $100 million asset with my parents' $240,000 real estate narrative. They focused on my self-determination, the young woman who built her own legacy against family rejection. I sat in my corner office, overlooking Seattle, achieving the power I always wanted. The work required extreme precision, but the feeling was anticlimactic. I had the skill and the asset, but the emotional debt was gone, leaving a strange void. The revenge was perfect, the justice served, yet I felt a profound sense of emptiness. The relentless determination that had driven me for years was tied to their toxic dynamic and their conditional approval. Now that tether was cut. I had achieved my goal, proving I wasn't needy. But proving myself to people who no longer mattered felt like a monumental waste of pain. I had to redefine my life's complexity and find a new purpose for my power. My parents, predictably, contacted the press, claiming I was over-focused on my career and suffering from emotional complexity. They tried to reclaim their narrative of entitlement, but the public wasn't buying it. I drove past my old family home one last time. I didn't stop. Instead, I established the Rachel Carter Fund for Tech Education, funding scholarships for needy students. The total fund asset? $400,000. The irony was poetic precision. $400,000, 1,000 times the $400 they rejected me for. It was a silent testament to my determination and a final, compassionate correction of their toxic dynamic. The greatest power I gained wasn't the money. It was the emotional solvency to turn my pain into purpose. I was finally truly free, not free from them, but free for myself. My legacy had begun. My story is a testament to the power of self-determination born from family rejection. I achieved financial solvency and established a philanthropic legacy. But what final advice can I give to anyone still carrying an emotional debt from a toxic dynamic? And how do you truly turn your personal pain into your greatest asset? I was walking out, finished with their toxic dynamic, when my mother grabbed my arm. Her face, usually controlled, was frantic. The power had completely shifted, leaving her desperate to cling to the family legacy. "Rachel, wait. You can't just leave. The Forbes story, it still belongs to us. That $100 million asset will reflect on our family. We deserve your approval for raising you. You only want to claim the power now because you finally understand the precision of my valuation. You lost the right to my legacy when you used the $400 debt as a weapon." My indifference finally broke her. The truth spilled out, messy and filled with years of buried pain. It wasn't about the $400, Rachel. It was about your determination. We were terrified of it. Your grandfather, he left a massive trust. Millions. But the clause was devastating. The funds could only go to the child who demonstrated need and stayed close, ensuring they had no outside power. You, with your coding skill and your fierce determination, were a threat. You didn't need us. Every rejection was designed to keep you from achieving solvency and leaving us. Jessica was the opposite. We molded her into the perfect dependent, the kind of needy person the trust demanded. The $240,000 real estate asset was proof we were maintaining the facade of entitlement, that $400. That small amount was the most important. Denying it proved you were not our dependent. It was the transaction that protected the massive legacy for Jessica. I saw the horrifying truth of their toxic dynamic. Their cruelty was a cold, calculated strategy, a financial complexity dressed up as familial debt. They sacrificed my well-being for an inherited asset. So, all my years of striving for your approval were just you trying to get rid of me. I built a $100 million asset out of your rejection. I took out my phone. I'm transferring $400 right now. Exact amount. The financial debt is settled, with absolute precision. I showed her the screen. That part of your control is over. The massive emotional debt you created is also settled. You showed me your cards. My solvency is my freedom, and my self-determination is complete. My legacy is independent of you. You no longer have any power over me. Goodbye. I turned and walked out the door, leaving her frozen in her newfound pain. I drove away, the shock still fresh, but the bitterness was gone. The revenge was realizing their manipulation had failed, my determination had won. I found true serenity in my self-determination. My new purpose, the Rachel Carter Fund. Asset value, $400,000. 1,000 times the $400 they denied. I built a charitable legacy out of their rejection and entitlement. The greatest power in life isn't inherited assets or financial complexity. It's the unconditional approval you grant yourself, the skill to turn pain into determination. That's the solvency that matters. I may have walked away from my biological family, but I found my true dynamic in David Lynn. I finally had a family built on respect, skill, and genuine approval, not conditional debt or rejection. My story is a testament to the power of self-determination born from family rejection. I achieved financial solvency and established a philanthropic legacy. But what final advice can I give to anyone still carrying an emotional debt from a toxic dynamic? And how do you truly turn your personal pain into your greatest asset? Weeks turned into months. The toxic dynamic faded into a distant memory, replaced by the profound peace of true solvency. I woke up every day, my determination now focused on Neuralink's precision, not on earning their conditional approval. The media circus around the $100 million asset eventually calmed. My parents' attempts to reassert their entitlement and label me with emotional complexity were ignored. I learned that my power wasn't in the revenge, but in my absolute self-determination. The Rachel Carter Fund officially launched. My new legacy was turning my pain into a tangible asset for others. I took the skill I used to build Neuralink and applied that same precision to charity. Helping students who truly were needy. I achieved financial solvency and emotional peace. But what is the one crucial, final lesson I learned about turning family rejection into the ultimate engine for self-determination? And what is the single most important action anyone can take to cut the final emotional debt? Life was stable. My determination was channeled entirely into Neuralink. The $100 million asset was growing, managed with cold precision. I no longer needed their approval. My metrics were my true source of solvency. I was in a board meeting when my COO, Sarah, burst in, pale. "Rachel, the Vortex exploit is public. A zero-day hack. Our core data assets are being compromised. This is a 5-alarm complexity." This was different. No family entitlement. No emotional debt. This was a pure test of my skill, my team, and my power. I felt a strange calm. This was a challenge my old, needy self could never have handled. We immediately converted the conference room into a war room. Every team member was focused, driven by professional determination. The key was to address the core vulnerability with absolute precision before the breach became a catastrophic legacy. I called David Lynn. Not for a solution, but for perspective. "David, we're compromised, I know. This isn't revenge, Rachel. This is business. This is where your true power is proven." The media coverage was instantaneous. Our stock plunged. This wasn't just a loss of data, it was a threat to Neuralink's solvency and reputation. One wrong move, and the $100 million asset could be wiped out, validating my family's old rejection. A sliver of the old fear returned. The fear of failure, the fear of being truly needy again. But I didn't let it paralyze me. I used the memory of their toxic dynamic as fuel for hyper-precision coding. The exploit was brilliant, a deep dive into the system's inherent complexity. It required unparalleled skill to neutralize. Hours blurred into a single night. We were fighting not just a hacker, but a fundamental flaw in the legacy code. Around 4 a.m., I saw it. The tiny, elegant flaw in the encryption key rotation. It was a moment of pure, technical solvency. I crafted the patch myself, my hands moving with surgical precision. We deployed the patch. The flow of compromised data stopped instantly. The room erupted, but I stayed quiet. The victory was silent and absolute. The $100 million asset was secure. "Rachel, you saved the company. You have proven you are the best. This is the only approval that matters." His voice was full of genuine respect, not conditional entitlement. The media quickly pivoted. The Vortex hack became the Rachel Carter defense. My power was now cemented in professional skill and crisis management, not just valuation. My self-determination was undeniable. I knew my parents saw the news. They watched their rejected daughter save a $100 million company. The ultimate revenge was realizing they were completely irrelevant to my new, massive professional debt and success. I learned that true power isn't about avoiding pain. It's about facing the new complexity of life with the determination and precision you've acquired. I no longer needed their rejection as fuel. My dynamic was no longer defined by rejection but by my next innovation. I looked at the team, my new family built on skill and mutual approval. My self-made legacy was secured. The Vortex hack was the final test. I proved my skill and precision were greater than any family rejection. But how did this massive professional crisis finally give me the complete emotional solvency I needed? And what is the single most important action anyone can take to cut the final emotional debt and turn their pain into their greatest asset? I was finally enjoying the calm of my technical solvency when an anonymous email landed. Subject: the $400 debt. I almost deleted it, but my curiosity, driven by years of emotional complexity, was too strong. The email was from an old family lawyer, now retired. He confirmed the trust fund. But the new hidden truth? My father had secretly amended the trust to increase the financial asset for the needy child, ensuring my rejection was absolute. Their determination to exclude me was more profound than my mother admitted. It wasn't just fear, it was a calculated act of ultimate power to deny me any portion of the family legacy. Their entitlement was a carefully constructed cage. I closed the email. No surge of pain. No desire for revenge. The truth was merely historical data. I achieved true emotional solvency by realizing their manipulation of the asset was solely their problem, not my self-determination. I glanced at the code on my monitor, clean and built with absolute precision and skill. My legacy was secured. I had exchanged their false, conditional approval for a life built on pure merit. That was my ultimate power. The final truth confirmed their absolute rejection, but it also gave me absolute freedom. I had achieved financial and emotional solvency. Now, I want to leave you with my most important takeaways. How do you truly transform family pain into lifelong determination? And what is the single most important action you can take today to build a legacy based on your own self-determination and not someone else's conditional approval? My story wasn't about the $100 million asset. It was about the power to redefine myself. I had turned their $400 rejection into the core of my determination. Every ounce of pain they caused became the fuel for my legacy. I realized the solvency I craved wasn't financial, but emotional. When I paid back the $400, I wasn't settling a debt, I was cutting the last thread of their toxic dynamic. My precision in coding mirrored the precision needed for emotional severance. My parents' entitlement was always based on fear. Fear that I didn't need them, that my skill made me independent. They wanted me to be needy so they could control the inherited asset and maintain their fragile sense of power. Looking back, the $400 rejection was the greatest gift. It forced me into absolute self-determination. It made me build a legacy based on merit and determination, free from their conditional approval and complex family politics. I found my true family in the Neuralink team and David Lin, a dynamic built not on debt or blood, but on mutual respect, shared skill, and genuine approval. They are my true emotional asset. The final step to freedom is realizing you don't need revenge. You need distance. You need to focus your precision on creating something beautiful and true. My power is measured not by how much I hurt them, but by how much I've grown. If you are carrying an emotional debt or feel controlled by conditional approval, I want you to know, you are not needy. Your determination is your greatest power. Start your own legacy today. Find your $400 moment. Identify the symbolic rejection that limits you. Pay that emotional debt. Use your skill to turn that pain into fuel. Build your life with the same relentless precision I used to build Neuralink. That is my entire story of revenge through self-determination. I hope my journey from $400 debt to $100 million asset inspires you to seek your own emotional solvency. Now, let's talk about your next step. What is the one major symbol of rejection you need to address today to start building your independent legacy? Even after the solvency of Neuralink was secured, the media wasn't finished. They sniffed out my family's attempts to control the narrative. My parents, desperate to save their image, agreed to a local news interview. The scene was predictable: my mother's signature pearl necklace, my father's forced smile. They sat there, oozing an artificial sense of entitlement, ready to reassert their toxic dynamic for public approval. Mr. Carter, the public finds it hard to reconcile your daughter's success with your family's alleged rejection of her $400 college book fee. Did you intentionally keep her needy? That is a severe distortion. Rachel has always suffered from emotional complexity. Her success is a reaction to deep-seated pain. We offered her assets, but she deliberately chose rejection, Her $100 million legacy is not a triumph, it's a desperate cry for approval. Her ruthless business determination stems from deep insecurity. She put us into financial debt with her extravagance. We raised her with moral skill, not just coding skill. Her technical precision is great, but her lack of respect is a greater concern. Her foundation is just revenge veiled as charity. Rachel never needed us. She never truly needed the family power. She used us to fuel her determination. I, at least, acknowledge my need for family legacy and approval. I watched them, calm. They were using my success, my asset, to justify their toxic dynamic. Their public display of vulnerability was a desperate attempt to reclaim power through public approval. But Ms. Rachel Carter secured a $100 million valuation. She's demonstrated complete financial solvency and competence. Doesn't that contradict the narrative of deep emotional complexity? Financial precision does not equal personal maturity. She still owes us an apology and a significant asset for the emotional toll her determination has taken on our family. She is the source of all the pain. They were asking for me to settle their final debt, the emotional debt of their failure. I had nothing left to prove. Their continuous rejection was now the sound of my complete freedom. The public reaction was swift and brutal. The Carters' thinly veiled entitlement and desperate accusations of debt were ridiculed. The audience saw the performance for what it was, a final, pathetic grasp for lost power. The greatest act of revenge was realizing their opinion had zero impact on my solvency or my legacy. My life was no longer about them, it was about the precision of my code and the students my foundation helps. I turned off the news segment. The screen went black. I looked at myself, not for their approval, but for my own. My self-determination was complete. I was a power unto myself, built on skill and ethical determination. I had created a new dynamic where my asset was my freedom, my pain was my purpose, and my complexity was my greatest skill. The Carters' blame was just background noise to the building of my true legacy. Many of you face similar, smaller toxic dynamics. Perhaps it's a family member who uses financial debt or conditional approval to control you, or one who denies your determination and calls you needy. Remember, their blame is a mirror. They are projecting their own failure to achieve solvency and power. Your revenge is simply your precision in building a life they can no longer touch. The Carters' final attempt to reclaim power failed, proving their ultimate irrelevance. I achieved true solvency. But what is the single, crucial final piece of advice that allowed me to turn their constant rejection into the engine for my self-determination? And what is the best strategy for you to inoculate yourself against external blame and build your independent legacy? I expected the public spectacle, but my team didn't. They watched the news, horrified by my family's attempts to twist my determination and label my $100 million asset as pain-fueled complexity. Sarah walked into my office. We saw the interview. It was disgusting. They tried to turn your precision into pathology. But we know the truth about your skill and your legacy here, David Lynn called immediately. Rachel, I hope you turned it off. Their entitlement is a bottomless pit. You don't need to feel guilty about their rejection. Your success is the only approval you'll ever need. You settled your financial debt. You proved your solvency. Now, focus on the people who choose you. That is your non-toxic dynamic. That is your true power. He reminded me that family is a choice. Later that day, my team surprised me. They had anonymously paid the $400 for the textbooks to my mother's account, then sent a card, "Consider the symbolic debt cleared. We support your self-determination." The irony was heavy. My family had labeled me needy to control me, but my team, built on shared skill and merit, freely gave me the $400 solvency I never asked for. Their belief was my true asset. My ultimate revenge was realizing their accusations meant absolutely nothing to the people who truly mattered. The precision of my work and my ethical determination spoke louder than their manufactured pain. I realized my life was defined by the new code of conduct. Self-determination is the ultimate power. Ethical skill is the only legacy worth building. Unconditional approval is the only currency. I chose to focus on the future, on the students the Rachel Carter Fund helps, on the next breakthrough at Neuralink. My dynamic was now forward-looking, free from the complexity of the past. The unconditional approval from my chosen family was the last piece of the puzzle, proving my solvency was complete. I no longer needed the fuel of rejection. So, how do you find your own non-toxic dynamic, and what tangible action can you take today to build a legacy based on your own ethical determination? Time does not heal, it merely provides distance. Several years passed. The initial heat of revenge cooled into the quiet satisfaction of self-determination. My focus shifted entirely from fighting my family's rejection to building my legacy. The Rachel Carter Fund grew exponentially. It wasn't just a charitable asset, it was a testament to turning pain into purpose. I used my analytical skill and precision to identify truly needy students, ensuring maximum solvency impact. My life was defined by my non-toxic dynamic with David Lin and the Neuralink team. We built our relationships on unconditional approval and mutual determination, a stark contrast to the entitlement and conditional debt of my past. I no longer indulged in the emotional complexity of trying to understand my parents. Their motives were irrelevant. My power was in my ability to choose simplicity and focus on the practical application of my skill. The $100 million valuation was just a number. My real legacy wasn't the money, it was the story of turning a $400 rejection into a $400,000 philanthropic commitment. That was the asset that truly measured my determination. The final debt I cleared wasn't to my family, but to the idea of needing their validation. I realized that my quest for revenge had unintentionally led to my own ultimate liberation and emotional solvency. This story proves that you choose your dynamic. You choose to be fueled by pain or by purpose. You choose your legacy. I chose to wield my power through precision, skill, and self-determination, not bitterness. That $400 was never about the money. It was the symbol of conditional approval. The cost of entitlement. By paying it back with technical precision, I effectively nullified their lifetime attempt to impose financial complexity on me. To anyone watching, find your source of genuine power. It's not in the inherited assets or debt. It is in your specialized skill and the unwavering determination to define your own worth, regardless of external rejection. You cannot achieve solvency while still carrying their emotional debt. Cut the cord. Walk away from the toxic dynamic. Don't be needy for their story, create a legacy that is entirely your own. I sit here now, years later, surrounded by the work I built. No longer the rejected daughter, but the founder, the mentor, the financially solvency and emotionally free woman. My life is a testament to self-determination. My revenge was the beautiful, precise life I built. Their pain was the unintended asset that funded my dreams. I hope this story gives you the determination to define your own legacy against all the odds and complexity. True skill is not just coding, it's the moral skill to turn anger into construction, not destruction. It's choosing ethical power over bitter revenge. It's choosing peace over continuous conflict. My final legacy is built on self-determination and ethical skill. I achieved financial and emotional solvency by choosing construction over destruction. So, as we wrap up my story, I want to ask you the most important question of all. What one toxic dynamic are you choosing to walk away from today, and what is the first asset of peace you will build in its place? The silence is the loudest sound of true solvency. The old ties, once a source of constant pain, didn't snap, they simply faded. My family's toxic dynamic became a statistical anomaly, irrelevant to my present legacy. I used to need their rejection as fuel. It was a perverse asset that drove my determination. But once I achieved self-determination, the fuel ran out. I no longer had the needy attachment to their conditional approval. The greatest skill I learned wasn't coding, it was radical honesty. Honesty about the debt they imposed, the complexity of their demands, and the true cost of their entitlement on my emotional solvency. Their final act of public blame showed me their deep-seated insecurity. Their constant need to assert power was simply a fear of being forgotten. They chose fragile entitlement over genuine connection. My revenge was ultimately irrelevant to my peace. The life I built, with its precision, its ethical foundation, and its power, would have been necessary even without their rejection. Revenge was just the ugly starting engine. The greatest asset is not the $100 million valuation, it is the internal realization that I am not defined by the wounds I carry. My legacy is my ability to transform historical pain into future purpose. My new dynamic is continuous growth. I still apply the same relentless determination and precision to Neuralink and my fund, but the motivation is pure innovation, not validation. Find the symbolic $400 in your life, the emotional debt, the source of conditional approval. Don't be needy for their resolution. Use your specialized skill to solve your own complexity. Stop waiting for their approval. Your self-determination is the only power you need. Build a legacy so undeniable, so rooted in your ethical determination, that their rejection becomes background noise. My story ends here. Not with a dramatic confrontation, but with quiet peace. The old ties faded because I chose to stop watering the poisoned garden. I achieved ultimate solvency and complete freedom. The greatest lesson? Revenge is a path of mutual destruction. True power is the inner precision to build a better future, free from the debt of your past. Don't chase the asset they withheld. Chase the skill they denied you. That skill will buy you the only solvency that matters, the freedom to be truly and unconditionally you. Your legacy is not their entitlement. It is your determination to turn pain into an ethical asset that helps others who are truly needy. That is the final, beautiful twist of my story. Thank you for watching my journey from $400 rejection to $100 million power. I hope this video helps you find your path to ultimate self-determination and peace. I achieved ultimate solvency and peace when I realized that my revenge was the life I built, not the pain I inflicted. But if you could only take one action today to start building your independent legacy and cut the final thread of their toxic dynamic, what would it be? Let me know in the comments below. With the emotional debt fully repaid and the toxic dynamic faded, my determination needed a new focus. I chose to channel my lifelong drive for precision into something revolutionary, a new project for human connection. We called it echogenesis. It was the ultimate complexity, requiring all the skill and coding precision Neuralink had mastered. An AI system designed to bridge cognitive gaps for the socially isolated and those burdened by emotional pain. This was my new definition of power, not control over others, but the ability to innovate for others. I used my unique experience of rejection and pain to shape the AI's empathy module. My family defined legacy by inherited assets and hollow entitlement. I defined mine by what I freely gave. Echogenesis was my definitive answer to their conditional approval, a $1 billion asset built purely on merit. The launch was quiet, scientific, and focused. David Lynn stood beside me. Rachel, this project proves your solvency isn't just financial. It's human. You've used your whole life's determination to give others a voice. We received a message from a pilot user, an elderly woman who felt profoundly needy and isolated. She wrote that echogenesis was the first source of genuine, non-judgmental approval she'd had in years. That was my true revenge. Not destroying my family, but building something that healed the same kind of wounds they inflicted. My self-determination was no longer defined by the debt of my past, but by the hope of the future. I stood in the lab, watching the gentle lights of the server racks. I was finally at peace. The complexity of family was replaced by the beautiful precision of code serving human skill and connection. Your legacy is not what you avoid, it is what you create. Use your deepest pain, your $400 rejection moment, to fund your next, most meaningful project. Build an asset of pure purpose. My story of revenge is over. It morphed from a personal attack into a global solution. My self-determination won, not with anger, but with skill and determination applied with ethical precision. This is the final twist. The girl they rejected became the woman who built a billion-dollar legacy and then dedicated her power to heal the rejection of the world. That is true self-determination. My new chapter, Project Echo Genesis, is the ultimate expression of my solvency, a legacy built on healing, not revenge. I've closed the book on my pain. Now, I turn the final page over to you. What is the name of the new chapter you are starting today? And how will you use your unique skill to turn your $400 rejection into your greatest asset? I've shared my entire journey, from the $400 rejection to achieving $100 million solvency. Now, the focus shifts to you. How can you transform your own family pain into power? Lesson 1: Your worth is not a function of their approval. Lesson 2: Stop chasing their inherited assets or trying to settle an emotional debt. Your greatest asset is your self-determination. Use the exact same precision and determination I used in my code to build your own life. Lesson 3: Don't let their complexity make you feel needy. Their entitlement is a weakness, not a power. Channel your energy into mastering a genuine skill that creates undeniable value and builds your ethical legacy. Lesson 4: The ultimate act of revenge is achieving peace. Walk away from the toxic dynamic. Don't let your legacy be defined by their blame. Define it by the kindness, solvency, and precision you bring to the world. Lesson 5: Your story starts now. You have the power to rewrite your script. I want to hear about it. Hit the like button if my story resonated, and subscribe for more content on self-determination and building true assets.